had always been fascinated by the woods behind her grandmother's old cottage. It was a place of whispered secrets and ancient trees that twisted like old hands reaching toward the sky. When she was little, her grandmother used to warn her about the woods, saying, "There are things in there you can't understand, child. Best stay on the path." But now that she was 17 and her grandmother had passed, Lila felt the pull of the forest stronger than ever. She decided that she would finally explore it, despite the warnings echoing in her mind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, Lila ventured into the woods. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth, and the sounds of rustling leaves and distant birds were the only things keeping her company. She followed a narrow, winding path that she hadn't seen before, one that seemed to appear only when the light was just right. She told herself it was probably just an old animal trail, but there was something strangely purposeful about it, as if it was meant for her. As she walked deeper, she noticed something odd. The usual forest sounds had ceased. No birds, no crickets, just the sound of her own footsteps and the occasional crackle of a twig snapping underfoot. The trees grew closer together, their branches intertwining like fingers clasping in prayer, and Lila couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Just when she thought she should turn back, she saw it. An old moss-covered cabin, hidden deep within the trees. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades, its windows dark and hollow, the door slightly ajar. Intrigued, Lila approached cautiously, her heart pounding. As she stepped onto the creaking porch, she noticed a small wooden sign above the door. It read, "The Keeper's Cottage." The name sent a chill down her spine. She'd never heard of anyone living in these woods, let alone a keeper. The door swung open with a low groan, revealing a dim interior filled with dusty furniture, faded photographs, and shelves lined with jars of strange, unidentifiable objects. Lila's curiosity got the better of her, and she stepped inside, the floorboards protesting under her weight. As she explored the cabin, she found a peculiar book on a table in the center of the room. It was bound in leather, its pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches of strange symbols. One page in particular caught her attention, a drawing of a figure in the woods surrounded by shadowy creatures that looked half human, half beast. The figure was labeled the Keeper. Lila's pulse quickened. As she studied the drawing, the cabin's air grew colder, and the faint whisper of a voice echoed around her. It was a woman's voice, soft and melodic, calling her name. Lila. Lila. Panicking, she turned around, expecting to see someone behind her, but the room was empty. The voice continued, growing louder and more insistent, until it felt like it was right in her ear. Then, suddenly, the whisper stopped, replaced by a sound like footsteps approaching the cabin. Lila rushed to the window and peered outside. She saw a tall, cloaked figure moving slowly through the trees. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but Lila knew, instinctively, that this was the Keeper. She felt a pull, like the forest was drawing her closer to this figure, but something deep inside her screamed to run. Without thinking, Lila grabbed the book and bolted out of the cabin, sprinting down the path she had come from. But the path was no longer the same. It twisted and turned in ways she didn't recognize, leading her deeper into the forest instead of out. The trees seemed to shift around her, closing in, and every time she glanced back, the Keeper was closer, moving silently through the underbrush. In her panic, Lila stumbled and fell, dropping the book. As she scrambled to her feet, the pages flipped open, revealing a note written in her grandmother's handwriting. "To my dearest Lila, if you are reading this, it means you found the Keeper's cottage. I hoped you never would. You must leave the book and run. The Keeper is bound to the woods, and now it knows you are here. You are its next keeper unless you escape. But remember this, no one who enters these woods leaves unchanged." Lila's mind reeled. Her grandmother had known about this place, about the Keeper, but before she could process it, the cloaked figure was upon her. It reached out with a hand that was not entirely human, and Lila felt a sudden, overwhelming compulsion to follow. She knew then that the Keeper was not a person. It was a role, a curse passed down through time. But here's the twist. As the figure's hood fell away, Lila saw a familiar face beneath. It was her grandmother. Not as the loving old woman she remembered, but younger, with eyes that held centuries of knowledge and sorrow. "You were never meant to leave. the figure whispered. I've been waiting for you. The forest chooses its keeper, and now, Lila, it has chosen you. The keeper wasn't chasing Lila to harm her, it was her grandmother's spirit, bound to the woods, looking for a way to pass on the burden. Lila had unknowingly taken the first steps into her new role, trapped in the endless cycle of guardianship over the haunted woods. The last thing Lila saw as the shadows closed in around her was the old path, shifting back into place as if it had never changed, ready to lure in the next unsuspecting soul.